Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're brand new, hit that subscribe button, comment down below what you want to see next, and like the video for more content. Okay guys, it's been a long time since I've been back on this channel. I posted a little update that I would be back on here uploading very soon. Now, I won't be uploading on here like I used to guys, but I will be posting videos here and there. But not 6 months apart, okay? Trying to do something at least like a month, at least, or about 1 month to do like a different video, so it won't be 6 months like I have been doing guys, 6 to 7 months like my last video on this channel. But today, let's go ahead and review the iPad 3rd generation and see how it holds up in 2024. So without any further ado, let's get to the intro and start this video. The iPad 3, on the surface, it actually looked pretty good. It had the all-new Retina display, which at the time was top of the line, and a huge improvement on other iPads before this. And the first iPad to have the first 1 GB of RAM, and the first iPad to have the A5X chipset to ensure great performance. Which also was the first iPad to have LTE capabilities, something that has not been seen in iPhones yet. Somebody wrote that this iPad back in the day had the best display seen on a mobile device and was the best on the planet. The iPad 3 came out in March of 2012, but was later discontinued in October of the same year. I'm kinda Chris, guys, and today I'm going to show you how the iPad 3 holds up 10 years later and see if this thing is good in 2024 or if it's just a piece of junk.
With a product that's more amazing than the iPad 2 with its big, beautiful 9.7-inch screen, super fast A5 chip, all-day battery life, and elegant thin and light design. Well, stop wondering. Today we're announcing the new iPad, and it is amazing. We've taken it to a whole new level, and we are redefining the category that Apple created with the original iPad.
This iPad had a good pixel density of 1536 by 2048, and the pixels on here was 248 per inch. With this iPad 3 having a 9.7-inch display Retina screen, this was by far the best consumer product in 2012, which in today is roughly on par with the newest iPad Air. With the same pixels, all those screens just have improved since then. This right here is the iPad 9th generation, and despite having a sleeker design and more modern, this thing still has the same Retina display alongside the pixels and this iPad. As you can see, everything on here looks more modern and more sleek. All the apps look more modern and up to date. This iPad still has bezels and a home button too on it. And at the time, this iPad was doing pretty good, and it only had 2 colors, which was only black and white. Let me show you. Orders for this iPad 3rd generation was absurdly high. According to Apple, the iPad 3 have sold 3 million units in the first 3 days. That's a lot. By the second quarter, Apple has claimed 60 or 70% of the global market sale, and the top thing, that's pretty high. But if you guys are curious, that'd be 30% today, if you guys are just curious. This may have been the peak of the iPad line, but it came in the worst, if not the worst, iPad to have been released. If you guys don't know the iPad 3, why would people, you might be saying, well, Chris, why would something be such a good upgrade be the worst upgrade? The iPad 4 came out 6 months later, but would that be enough to truly destroy this thing? Well, let's find out. The real core of this iPad lays within the A5 chipset. The iPad's 3rd generation A5 chipset was already supported up until 2019 running iOS 9.3.5. The iPad roughly got 4 years of support. The issue with this iPad is it shouldn't have gotten support. To the iPad mini, to the iPhone 4S, and everything like that, ran iOS 9 smoothly and chugging performance like it should. That's why here's the iPhone 4S, but the iPad 3 is something that should not have gotten that update. And even though iOS 8 wasn't the greatest, iOS 7 wasn't the best, but also wasn't the fastest either. This iPad had 1 year and a half, top of the line iPad, running really fast until the slowdown with iOS chugging updates into this thing, making it slow and unusable half the time. Not to mention the bloated iOS updates that kept happening to this iPad. With the transparency and RAM in this iPad 3rd generation right here, and all the RAM just wasn't enough to hold this like it should. And the iPad A5X chipset was not capable of holding that much. But most of you guys' devices though had half a gigabyte. The bad thing about the iPad 3rd generation, guys, is that it takes a lot of pixels to push this iPad, and yeah. The Apple's A5X chipset in this iPad right here was pushing power to the Retina's display screen, making it more graphical and powerful, but needed that much energy to push something like that on the iPad 3. I can't say the iPad 3 feels a lot better than the iPad 1 or the iPad 2. This thing is still considered unusable and will make you want to throw it out your car window or even just stomp on the iPad or just end up snapping it over your knee. The good thing about the iPad 3 is that it does have that curved aluminum on here and everything else like it should. This iPad also this is the last iPad to have the 30-pin charging cable right there. The iPad 4 looks very similar to the iPad 3, but was a lot better than the iPad 3 itself. Everything on here looked the same and everything as the iPad 3. Only thing that has changed was just the charging port, which they went from the 30-pin charging connector to the lightning cable, which today in the iPhone 15 and the new iPads take the new USB-C charging ports, kind of like how Android does. So did Apple copy Android this time? But both the iPad 3 and the iPad 4 had black plastic buttons on here. The Apple logo on here is like a early 2010 Apple aesthetic on here. The curvature of the iPad makes this thing very comfortable to hold, not to mention also easier to use as well. If you guys ever used the iPad 1, it was actually had some sharp edges and made it awkward to hold. But both the iPad 3 and the iPad 4S would be the last iPhones and iPads that had a 30-pin charging connector until the end of 2012 when Lightning took over. The major question is though, why was this iPad released? And it got released, like I said, in March of 2012, but discontinued in October of the same year. That makes us want to ask the question, why was it released in the first place? Like, why does this exist? But Apple also had a lot of unhappy customers who bought the top-of-the-line iPad that 6 months or even after that had slow updates and just made this iPad really completely not that great. The good thing is though, when the iPad 4 came out, Apple released a 30-day return policy so you could return the iPad 3, but it didn't really make much of a difference. Again, you really can't blame people for buying the iPad 3, but why would Apple release something like this and take it away so soon? The iPad 4 came with the A6 chipset, which had more power over the A5 and the A5X chipset, and actually was able to run pretty good and better than the iPad 3 and got updates all the way up to until iOS 10. There is a reason why the iPad 3 was the lowest hated iPad among consumers, but this thing made all the difference in 2012. So while this iPad may look like the worst of the entire lineup, with 2021 or 2 hindsight, 2012 did not look like that in 2012. Or intentionally at least. I guess what I'm trying to say is the Apple's A5X chipset cannot handle iOS 9. More games and apps today require more things above iOS 9, and kind of hard to find apps that actually support stuff on this old iPad. But you can also download the last compatible update that was available if you have bought games previously on the new device that you have, like YouTube, Twitter, anything like that. You can also re-download the last compatible version, which should be downloading considering one exists for iOS 9 of the last compatible version. Now, despite this iPad being really old and everything, you could still use the apps that you're used to, like YouTube, Netflix, Facebook, Messenger, Instagram, even Twitter. All those still work on here. Although Twitter, if you use it on this iPad, it will show Twitter, but it'll redirect you to X. But as you can see on my iPad right here, I do have Facebook and Messenger installed as well. I haven't got Instagram back yet, but I will soon. The Facebook and Messenger, the Facebook is a really old version of Facebook and stuff. And again, you can also go to the Safari browser on this iPad and watch YouTube completely ad-free. So that's really good about this iPad. It's really big, and with you going to youtube.com, if you don't have the app installed, you can watch anything, music videos, movies, videos just on YouTube ad-free, which is a really big improvement, although over the newer modern versions of the iPad and the iPhone, when you try to watch a video, you get ads constantly. So that's really big improvement on that. Now, this iPad would be great for a kid or somebody who just doesn't want to use an iPad that wouldn't have a lot of stuff to do on it. But this iPad would be great to watch Netflix on, but I definitely wouldn't recommend going out and buying one of these today, as on how slow it is, and it's pretty much useless with newer modern versions of apps. These iPads online are still expensive still, but for the price of it and for the slowness of iOS 9, it's not really worth it, no. Now, if you can find an iPad that was running on iOS 5, that might be great for you, because I think that would be the better option. And again, iOS 9 on this iPad just goes pretty slow. This iPad 3 also has a big old giant battery compared to the iPad 2 somehow, and has 11,658 amp power to it. Although with more pixels to push on this tablet, it really just requires a much power, and with the iPad being used one or a day or two, completely fine, or maybe even longer. But most people have a battery list at the bottom of their concerns about this iPad, or any iPhone or iPad to be concerned at least about that. Not to mention this thing also had a very bad camera on here. Okay, wait, I take that back. It's completely bad in today's quality of cameras, but in 2012, this camera was the hype, and it had better quality over the iPad too. But this iPad has like a 5 megapixel camera on the back. The iPad can take some beautiful pictures outside in broad daylight, but can take some terrible pictures inside. But also it can also take some grainy photos as well. This thing can take pictures up to 1080p, which doesn't look like it though. It looks more like a 480 pixels, but yeah. The selfie camera, which is aka the front camera on the iPad, is a VGA standard, which actually is pretty accurate and stuff. Taking the picture I took earlier on this tablet up here on the screen. The iPad was great for taking normal selfie pictures and for FaceTime back in the day, which was pretty much all you needed back then. We can only hold the iPad back so much again with software. You can purchase this iPad in 16, 32, or even 68 gigabyte resolution. Again, if you can get an iPad that runs iOS 5, it'll run iOS 5 like a champ. And while you might buy the newer, while you might buy the older iPads just like this thing can run iOS 9 somewhat pretty good. But a lot of people say after iOS 7, 8, and 9 came out, the iPad 3 ran terribly and was doing an awful job and actually going very, very slow. This iPad with the display cannot save it, even though it's being obsolete, even though I made it look somewhat kind of fun on the screen. Apple should have released the iPad 4 6 months later like they planned, but just under the iPad 3 name, which would have made it look a lot better, because the iPad 3 that we have here hold a lot of customers. The iPad did have one flaw. Outside the US and Canada, this thing has some LTE problems with the cellular bands that resulted in multiple lawsuits. Another bad thing about the iPad 3 is this thing can get really hot if you're playing 3D games while it's plugged in charging. The iPad overheating wasn't enough to fuss about. It was really no big problem about that. But let me show you a picture of the timeline on Wikipedia that I found of each iPad that was sold in an amount of time. This right here is the iPads that were sold in different timelines. Look how long the iPad 2 got sold, and take a look at the iPad 3 right here with very little time on this. Apple moved on pretty quick, and people in Apple must have forgotten about the iPad 3 and everything. So they've moved on pretty quick from what we would have today. So again, the iPad 3, more simple. Again, you don't have the Game Center on the newer ones. The Game Center is built into the App Store now. The video icon on here is gone now, so that got replaced. Despite the new icons and the old icons, FaceTime looks the same, Safari looks the same, Photos look the same, and FaceTime all looks the same alongside the phone icon and the message icon. So if somebody was to give this iPad to somebody, they would just think it's just a normal iPad because of all the modern features it still has. This thing is still good to use in 2024, in my opinion, just to watch YouTube and play some older games. But is it really worth buying in 2024? Probably not. Now this thing is good as a streaming device and stuff if you have one sitting around your house, but never go out and actually buy one of these because they're shockingly overpriced. Which for me, I actually paid, well, it was actually pretty cheap for me. I actually paid like $25 for this, which really isn't that bad. Now, if you guys are trying to run Disney Plus on this iPad, it's not going to work because it's more modern, so you're definitely going to need like a newer iPad to watch Disney Plus if you guys watch that. Hulu and Netflix, I would say probably as well because they probably don't work on here anymore either. But YouTube does work on here. YouTube works. The old Facebook.com works on the Safari browser or just in the app. If you got the Facebook app, it'll still work on there too. Messenger looks the same. Although it'll tell you that it's going to get updated in it. Although if you download Messenger on the iPad 3, it's going to tell you it's going to be updated soon, but it never does. So just keep an eye out for that. The Messenger just looks the same as it normally does. So if you guys use Messenger a lot, it'll be okay. Snapchat, Twitter might require something new, but as far as I know, it should run just fine. But yeah, you guys might be asking, is it worth buying one of these? Should I go out and buy one of these? Absolutely not. Unless you have one sitting around your house and it's still in good condition, then there's really no need to go out and buy one of these in the modern generation that we have today. And you could probably get but you could probably get the newer iPad probably a lot cheaper and slimmer, like the iPad 9 that we have here, which still has the home button, still has everything. It's just more sleek, more modernly designed, and everything is like this. So if you guys want to get an iPad, this is probably the one to go with. Don't get the iPad 3rd generation, as it was a forgotten iPad that Apple and most consumers moved on from pretty quick. But with a piece of nostalgia holding onto this thing, you're probably wondering, why did I get this? Well, guys, I have old technology, and I can have use for this iPad right here. As you can see, I do got some games like Granny, Plants vs. Zombies. This thing is still really good to use, and I'll be playing some old games on this, and I'll be using it to just to hold on to it for a piece of nostalgia. So despite the newer iPads being thin and lightweight, this thing with the battery and the Retina display, really heavy. So this thing has some weight to it. But the iPhone 4S also has some good weight to it too. It was also had some good weight to it. But yeah. But comment down below, guys, what do you guys think? Would you guys ever use the iPad 3rd generation in today's modern generation, or would you rather just have the newer iPads? Let me know in the comments down below. With all that being said, guys, I think I've taken enough of you guys' time for today. And unfortunately, that's all the time I have for you guys today anyways. But with all that being said, guys, thank you so much for watching again. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next video. But gonna hit some first. I'll see you in the next video. Don't forget to check out my main channel, it's Chris Station, and my review channel, it's Review Station. But you guys have a nice day.